All right, welcome back everybody. So what I'm going to do today is the second part of the drawing exercise that we started last time with the tonal scale. So let me just say before I talk about the subject matter we're going to use, just notice up here, I went back and at the end of the last video I just noticed I could have done a better job of getting more, a little bit more breathing room between my different value steps. And so I went back and I tried to just be a little bit more methodical about these differences between them. So again, the idea is to have as big a stretch of value with these five value blocks that we've got as possible, so that you don't hamstring yourself in the drawing that we're going to do by not having enough values. So if you see two values close together, go back and try to get a little bit more room between them. So again, when I look at 1 and 2, I want that difference to be about like 2 and 3, and so on down the line. Okay, so the other thing that I did is with that original blank 16 by 16 box that I had you guys draw last time, I went in and I put in a tone, and I tried to gauge that tone to my third value, my middle value. So it's not perfect, but I want to get somewhere in that middle value range for that tone. So I'd like for you to do that as well. All right, the other thing you'll have to do for this drawing is to find a reflective object. So I've got this, I have this pot up here, or pitcher, and I want you to find something that's made out of metal rather than just something that's painted that's highly reflective. So that the metal works a little bit better. So, and the reason we're doing a reflective object is in this initial drawing with tone, there are two big lessons to get from tone. One is to, at the beginning anyway, and one is to see that it doesn't take a lot of tone to get an illusion. We don't have to have 50 or 60 different tones. We can, with 5 tones, we can give something that's fairly convincing. What's going to help us create this illusion of this reflective object is to keep our tonal system simple, and then also to make real shapes out of the tone. So the illusion of something that's reflective depends a lot on you being very specific about the boundaries of the tone that you create. So you can't be kind of blendy with the tones. You have to make really definite shapes with them in order for it to feel reflective. So, so this particular object is a good way to begin to think about tone, because those ideas, keeping the tone simple and keeping them very shape-oriented, will translate to other tonal ideas. All right. So, so at the start here, I'm going to draw the object, and as we draw these forms, I want you to try to do what we've been doing in class, run through all the steps. So at the beginning here, I don't want to get caught up with volume, even though we've gone through perspective. I don't want to start with ideas about volume. I want to think about just a flat envelope shape, right? That's how I began the semester. So I'm just seeing this as a very simple flat envelope shape that's going to allow me to sort of deal with the scale of this object in a very simple way. So I can make sure I get this as large as I want on the canvas, and try to do this fairly large. The tonal exercises that we do, you're just going to have a little bit easier time making tonal shapes if you work on a slightly larger scale. I'll keep this simpler here. Right, midline. Just using straight lines. Go to angular drawing to get something a little bit more specific here. And what you're going to find with tone is that, again, a lot of the success with this exercise, or any exercise we do really, but this one you'll certainly find, is that your drawing, your success with tone will only go so far as your drawing takes you. In other words, you have to spend some time getting your drawing in the ballpark. The tone is not going to save you. If you have a poor drawing in terms of your overall proportions, your again as you add tone, that's not really going to, it's not going to save you. So spend some time at this early stage and try to get yourself, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you get yourself in the ballpark in terms of the proportions that you see. Again, you're trying to keep things flat here. And with this is good. You should remember this, but if you have to erase here, you can use your chamois to erase the lines. Once I feel like I'm starting to get in the ballpark of where these forms should be, then at that point I can sort of use those perspective ideas that we have talked about in terms of how to think about these as volumes. So before we get to tone, it's nice to think about this flat shape that we're creating and think about how it relates to volume. So in other words, all of these forms up here are rounded, like conical or cylindrical forms. And so, I want to start thinking about those rounded forms. Again, all of our rounded forms that are spherical, if we turn the object up on end like this bottom here, remember those are going to appear as ellipses that have a horizontal axis to them. So all of these elliptical shapes, like in here or up here, the mouth of the picture up here, those are all going to be ellipses that have a horizontal axis. So when I'm doing these demonstrations, invariably when I turn off the video and look at what I've done, I'm horrified. So I may do what I did with the last demo and work on it a little bit after I finish with you all. But we need to get a little bit further here. So I'm going to, for the time being, leave my drawing. Work on it again after the video is turned off, but we'll call it a drawing at this point so that we can move on to the next stage. So, but again, take your time yourself at this stage. The effort that you put in now will definitely pay dividends once you go to the value shapes. The drawing will draw itself a little bit more if you've got a reasonable drawing. If your drawing is really off, then it's hard to recover from that. Okay. All right, so I've got this basic drawing down. Then what I want to do is I want to look at the reflective object and I want to try to break it down into a limited number of puzzle pieces. So think of it like a puzzle, like the whole thing is just a series of puzzle shapes that are coming together. And what are the most important puzzle shapes that I see? Not all of them, because there's a lot of them up there, but how can I, if I take my eyes out of focus or I squint a little bit, how can I reduce all of that up there into a manageable number of tonal shapes that I can put together? So, for example, down here in this lower part, this divides into a couple of units here. So over here, I've got a dark. This is going to be a 4 value over here, and then this section in here divides up into 2. So I'm going to sort of draw in these actual shapes that I see. So I've got one shape in here, so this is going to be a 4 in here. This down here is probably going to be a 2. This will be a 3, just thinking about, again, these limited values that I've got. Then over here I've got something that's very different along the edge, and that's going to be like a 4 over here. All right, so that sort of takes care of this area. And then down here I've got, this sort of comes under, this is going to be a 4 here, and this lower part here. This will be a 2 in here, and probably a 4 here, and maybe a 3 over here. And then the ground plane, here back here will be this will be a 2 as well. Back here is going to be a 3, a little bit darker. Okay, and then when I come up here, this area up here is going to be like a 4, and there'll be a 3 in there. This area is also going to be like a 4. So again, I'm actually drawing in the boundaries of the shapes. Again, like creating pieces of a puzzle that I'm going to lock together here. Then in this area, I'm going to have this will be like a 2 in here, and I'm going to have a couple of smaller shapes that'll be my this will be my highlights, and those will be 1s. So this handle is going to be it's going to be a 5. That's going to be a dark in there as well. In the mouth of this, that'll be a 5 as well. A 4 on this side, a 3 on this side. You know, none of these are going to work out perfectly to what you see. We're having to really simplify what we're seeing as best we can, trying to make the best judgments that we can about. Let me get most things mapped out here. All right. Okay, so then what I'm going to do, and also because we're taking something that's very complex and we're really simplifying it, you're going to have to make some aesthetic judgments about some of these shapes. Like some of these areas that I put in as 3 might be able to be a 2, might be able to be a 4. You know, just depending on how you relate it to the other shapes. So you're going to have to make some compromises and some decisions that just make the drawing look better. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in these values that I've got down here. And again, you don't have to be perfect, but I really want you to try to limit yourself to these 5 values. So we'll just start with the 5, the darks, what I feel like are the darkest dark. So that's like in here, I'll put in this darkest dark. And I'm not really trying to copy the values that I see, I'm going by what I've got here. So remember last time when I did that 5 value, I made it as dark as I absolutely could. So that's what I'm going to do here, make it as dark as I absolutely can. All right, so that's a 5. This handle's a 5 also over here, at least the bottom part of the handle. So that would be there'll be a 5. So again, I'm not looking up there. I'm not trying to copy that particular value. I'm translating what I see into this limited range of values that we established as the boundary for this particular drawing. Because what I don't want to happen is I don't want you to sort of see more and more values and add more and more values. I really want you to try to see how much you can get out of this limited series that we have here. Okay. So then like in here, I said this would be a 3. So my 3, I'm just going to unify a little bit with this. It'll darken it slightly, but keep it in this range of a 3 value. Right? So that's my 3. And again, you get a little bit more bang for your buck when you're simplifying. If you keep the values really clean and unified, and you don't have a bunch of like visual trash going on, like within each shape. You want to keep the shapes as sort of contained and unified and even as possible. So over here, I said this was going to be a 4, so not as dark as this, right? So that's a 4 over there, and then this is going to be a 4 over here as well. So and this isn't the same value as that over there. This is actually a little bit lighter than that value, but because I'm limited by these 5 values that I've chosen, I'm going to just make this as much the same as this one over here as I can. Okay. So this is a 2, so we leave this, and we said this 4 comes under here. And then down here, we said this is a 4 here as well. We said this is a 3 over here. So there's going to be a real tendency to to run some of these tones together. So you may have to periodically just kind of step back and redraw these shapes. It's a really good idea, I think, to, like when you're working with tone, to always sort of draw the shape in, like tell yourself, okay, here's my boundary for that tonal shape, and put it in. All right, so like well, let's get back up here. So this is a 4 underneath here. So that's a 4. This is a 4 also, hooking up with the handle. And then this area in here was also a 4. So not as dark as the mouth of the vase. Top is a 3. This is a 3 over here. Put this top area. We'll keep that 4. And again, feel free to to redraw as you go. You don't have to. If you see a way to make your drawing better as you go, go ahead and take a time out and do that. So this area in here is a 4. With a little 3 in the middle there. Again, over here we had just a 4 on top. It's a 3 down here. All right, so this area over here was a 2. We do have a 3 shape running through it. Here with a light edge. And this is actually a 3 in here. Again, I find myself, as you probably will, like it's easy to kind of go down a rabbit hole and start adding more and more shapes. So you just have to kind of gauge that. You don't want to. You want to add as much as the 5 values will allow you. So you don't want to try to push this past what you're actually able to do with the 5 values. Obviously, with just 5 values, we're a little limited in terms of, you know, what we can describe, but we still should get some reasonable kind of illusion going. Right, so my 2 is maybe, I'm just going to try to even it out a little bit. Okay. And then with your lightest light, so like with your 1s, again, as you go down in shape, as you get smaller and smaller shapes of tone that you're putting in, you have to be just as committed to making a shape out of it. So when I come down here and I put in, so like these highlights that I see, I have to continue to think in terms of a real shape, right? So I actually come in and will, even though the shapes get smaller, I'll just draw a smaller shape to make sure that I'm sort of continuing that that discipline of making a shape of the tone. So you might find that you know, with your paper you can erase out on one, but if you can't, if you feel like you've taken your paper past what it will do, you can come in with your white chalk and make the shape, but don't overdo the white chalk. I would try to get the tone out with an eraser first. Generally, it looks a little bit better, but again, if you've reached the saturation point with your paper, you can come in with your white chalk. So this little side thing is 3 in here. Okay, so I'll work on this. I think you should get the idea of what we're going after here, and I'll work on this a little bit on my own and just try to pull it together a little bit more. Okay, that's good. Thank you.